The Medal of Honor is the highest military honor in the United States. It was created around the time of the Civil War, and in that time period, over 3,000 people have earned a Medal of Honor. Only one of them was a woman. She lived in a time when women were expected to stay at home. She didn't do that. She marched into the battlefield. When she was told that ladies should wear dresses, she said no and wore trousers and a surgeon's coat. And when the government tried to take away her Medal of Honor that she earned, she wore it anyway and dared them to come and get it. This is the story of Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, the first female U.S. Army surgeon, a prisoner of war, and again, the only female recipient of a Medal of Honor. She defied the odds, broke the rules, and saved countless lives. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker was born in 1832 in Oswego, New York. Her parents were very progressive. They were abolitionists who believed in equality. They raised her and her 6 siblings to challenge traditional gender norms. The Walker family lived on a farm, and on that farm, all of the children were expected to do both the heavy labor as well as household chores. While doing heavy labor, it was very uncomfortable and impractical to wear women's clothing, and her mother was very big on corsets and tight lacings being super unhealthy, so Mary always dressed like her brothers when she was growing up. This is something she would carry with her into adulthood. She hated wearing skirts and would often wear pants. It was pretty much her lifelong fashion statement and a symbol of her rejection of traditional gender norms. While not working on the farm, the Walker parents were very, very adamant that all of their children be educated, their daughters as well as their son. There really weren't any schools for girls around, and so they founded the very first free schoolhouse in Oswego in the late 1830s. After finishing primary school, the children could decide what they wanted to do next. Mary and 2 of her sisters wanted to continue their education, and so they went to Valley Seminary in Fulton, New York. In her spare time, she loved to read books about anatomy and physiology, and she decided from a pretty young age that she wanted to be a doctor. As a young woman, she taught at a school so that she could earn enough money to pay her way through Syracuse Medical College. She graduated with honors as a medical doctor in 1855 as the only woman in her class. She's only the second woman in the United States to receive a medical degree. Mary was fiercely independent, but that didn't mean that she was without love. When she was 23 in 1855, she married one of her med school classmates, Albert Miller, but she did things her own way. She wore a skirt with trousers underneath. When she said her wedding vows, she refused to include obey in them, and she kept her last name. He was fine with all of that stuff at the time, but the marriage did not last because he had a hard time dealing with his wife's non-reliance on him, and so Albert Miller was unfaithful to his wife, and she divorced him. She fought for women's rights, and this is one of the things that she was very concerned about. She said, "If it is right to be legally married, then it is right to be legally divorced. To be deprived of a divorce is like being shut up in prison because someone attempted to kill you. It is just as honorable to get out of matrimonial trouble legally as to be freed from any other wrong." She didn't dwell on the negative, and she went on after graduating med school to open up her medical practice. She had a hard time finding work, though, because a lot of times in that era, people didn't respect female doctors. They didn't trust them. They didn't think that they were as qualified as male doctors. And so she struggled to find patients. Still, she was determined to prove her skills, and the Civil War gave her a chance. When the war first broke out, she volunteered as a surgeon for the Union Army. However, at first, she was denied because women were not allowed to serve as Army surgeons. They told her she could be a nurse instead, but as a trained surgeon and a medical doctor of several years, she said absolutely not, and she decided to volunteer as a civilian surgeon instead. However, as the war dragged on, the need for more medical personnel became very necessary. In September of 1863, She had requested once again to practice as a surgeon for the U.S. Army, and she was finally accepted. She became the first female U.S. Army surgeon as a contract acting assistant surgeon civilian class by the Army of the Cumberland. During her work as a surgeon, she would often just kind of do whatever needed to be done in her eyes. She was known for crossing enemy lines in order to treat both Union and Confederate soldiers. In 1864, while she was treating wounded civilians behind Confederate lines, she was actually captured by the enemy and taken as a prisoner of war on the charge of spying. This was done literally minutes after helping a Confederate doctor perform an amputation. She was sent to the Castle Thunder in Richmond, Virginia, and remained there for 4 months until August of 1864. When she was finally released as the result of a prisoner exchange, instead of doing something reasonable, like, relaxing, she decided to go immediately back to the battlefield, undeterred by her 4-month captivity. At the end of the war in 1865, she was awarded the Medal of Honor, which is the highest U.S. military decoration, for her extraordinary service during the Civil War on the grounds of meritorious service by President Andrew Johnson. She was denied a military pension, but she did receive disability for injuries suffered during her imprisonment. After the war, Walker continued to practice medicine, but she also became a writer and a lecturer. She would talk about issues like health care, temperance or prohibition, the rights for women, and for dress reform. She continued to refuse to wear dresses and wore men's clothes quite often, including trousers, coats, and top hats. She believed dressing in women's clothing was restrictive and unhealthy, and she was a very large advocate for the change in this sort of uniform for women. She even got arrested multiple times for wearing men's clothing in public, but that did not deter her at all. In 1917, Congress changed the rules for Medal of Honor recipients, and they tried to take hers away. She said that she would absolutely not be giving that up and that she'd earned it, daring the authorities to try and come get it. In 1977, her Medal of Honor was officially restored by Jimmy Carter to acknowledge her service to our country. Dr. Walker was a rebel with a cause. She fought on the front lines of the Civil War, was the first female surgeon in the U.S. Army, and continued to fight limits that had been placed on women. She paved the way for women in medicine, the military, and more. She didn't just heal wounds, she broke barriers.